What if one tiny note, written on a yellow post-it, could turn an invisible cleaner into a millionaire whistleblower? Stay with me, because this true story will shock you. The world outside was still half asleep when Maya Bennett pushed her squeaky cleaning cart across the marble floor of Atlantic Plaza's 23rd floor. The time on the wall clock blinked 6:43 a.m. A few fluorescent lights flickered overhead, making her reflection look tired, older than 32. She took a deep breath, gripping the master key with trembling fingers. It wasn't the cold. It was the fear, the kind that never really leaves when you live paycheck to paycheck. She whispered to herself, just get through another day. The rent was due. Ella's 12th birthday was in 2 weeks, and all Maya had was $300, barely enough for a cake, let alone a party. Her 2004 Toyota Corolla groaned in the parking lot, one breakdown away from dying for good. Every morning felt like walking on thin ice, praying it wouldn't crack. But what if today, that ice finally broke, and something extraordinary rose from the cracks? Keep watching, StorySphere is about to show you how. She stopped in front of a door with polished gold letters, Richard Vaughn, CEO, Vaughn Development Group. The man behind that name was a mystery to her, sharp suit, sharper words, always in motion. Men like him didn't see people like her. To them, she was part of the furniture. Invisible, replaceable, forgettable. And maybe that was safer. The invisible can't be heard. She unlocked the door and slipped inside. The office smelled faintly of expensive cologne and mahogany. She moved mechanically, emptying bins, wiping desks, straightening chairs, her mind drifting to Ella's school note about overdue supplies. Guilt pressed heavy on her chest. Then something unusual caught her eye. A thick folder lay open on the CEO's desk, pages scattered like fallen leaves. In bold letters, the first line read, Declaration of Bankruptcy. Her stomach dropped. She glanced at the clock, 6:55 a.m. Nobody would arrive before 8. She shouldn't look. It wasn't her business. But her eyes couldn't resist. She leaned closer. Total consolidated debt, $64 million. Her brows knitted. The numbers didn't feel right. Years of handling cleaning invoices and balancing every penny for survival had given her an instinct for figures. She began to scan the creditor list, lips moving silently as she added, 12 million, 8 million, 15. She ran the sums twice, then a third time. 47 million, not 64. Her pulse spiked. Someone had added $17 million that didn't exist. It wasn't a typo, it was a setup. Someone wanted Richard Vaughn to sign away his company under false debt. Her father's voice echoed from a memory long buried. If someone had told me the numbers were wrong, I could have fought back. He'd lost everything to accounting fraud years ago. Died, broken, betrayed. Maya's throat tightened. She knew she should walk away, but another voice rose inside her, the one that said, do something. She pulled out her cracked phone and snapped quick photos of every page. Then she grabbed a yellow post-it from the desk. Her hand shook as she wrote, Mr. Vaughn, please check the numbers on page 7 before signing. The total debt adds up to 47 million, not 64. Someone inflated the figures. Please verify this before it's too late. A friend. She stuck the note to the top page, straightened the papers exactly as she'd found them, and hurried out. At 7:45, she clocked out in the basement, and should have gone home, but her feet refused to move. Her heart pounded so loudly she could almost hear it echo through the empty parking garage. At 7:56, a sleek black Mercedes rolled in. Richard Vaughn stepped out, not the powerful CEO she'd glimpsed before, but a man hollowed by defeat. His suit was rumpled, eyes red, shoulders slumped under invisible weight. He clutched a leather briefcase to his chest and walked toward the elevator like a condemned man headed for his final verdict. Maya hid behind a column, torn between fear and curiosity. She told herself, just go home. But something inside her needed to know, had he seen the note? Minutes passed. 8 o'clock, 8:10. Then her phone rang. Unknown number. Ms. Bennett? The voice on the line was low, strained. Yes, she whispered. This is Richard Vaughn. Are you still in the building? Her mouth went dry. I am. Don't leave, he said, urgent now. Please, I need to speak with you right now. The call ended. Footsteps echoed down the garage ramp, fast, uneven. When he appeared, she froze. The man who approached wasn't angry. He was undone. Tears shimmered in his eyes. In one trembling hand, he held the post-it note. Was it you? His voice cracked, a whisper filled with disbelief. You wrote this? Maya nodded slowly, bracing for the explosion, for him to fire her, humiliate her, call security. But instead, the unthinkable happened. The billionaire dropped to his knees on the grimy concrete floor in his $5,000 suit and sobbed. You just saved my life, he choked out. You saved everything. Maya stood frozen. She had never seen a rich man cry, not like this. He wiped his face, trying to compose himself. 17 million fake debts. My partner Austin Monroe forged them. He planned to force me into bankruptcy and buy the company for $500,000. A 60 million real empire, gone in minutes. And I was about to sign. She stared, wide-eyed. I checked security logs, he continued. Only one person accessed this floor before 8 a.m. You, a single mother. No reason to help me. No name on the note. No demand for money. Why did you do it? Maya swallowed hard. My father lost everything because of numbers that didn't add up. No one warned him. I couldn't let that happen again. He stared at her, something shifting behind his exhausted eyes, respect, gratitude, humanity. Come with me, he said suddenly. Austin will be here in 10 minutes. I'm going to confront him, and I want you there as a witness. You saw the real documents. She hesitated. Every instinct screamed run, but she thought of Ella, of birthdays missed, of the life she'd been surviving instead of living. And she took his hand. The elevator ride felt endless. Inside the glass walls, she saw their reflections, the billionaire and the cleaner, both trembling for different reasons. Whatever happens, he told her, don't be afraid. Just tell the truth. When the doors opened on the 23rd floor, the morning sun poured through the windows, flooding the office where fate waited on a mahogany desk. 8:27 a.m. The secretary's voice came through the intercom. Mr. Vaughn, Mr. Monroe is here. Rick looked at Maya. It's time. He squared his shoulders and said, send him in. If you were Maya, would you have left the note, or walked away and stayed invisible? Comment below, StorySphere wants to know. Austin Monroe entered the office with the slow confidence of a man who had never been questioned in his life. His silver hair was combed back, his gray suit pressed to perfection, his smile as polished as the cuff links on his wrist. Rick, he said smoothly, pretending surprise. I didn't expect an audience. His gaze landed on Maya, then flicked back to Richard. You're bringing staff into executive meetings now? How progressive. Sit down, Richard said. His tone calm but charged. The air felt electric, every second pulsing like a heartbeat. Maya stood in the corner, clutching her phone tightly, afraid to breathe. Austin took the chair opposite the desk, crossing one leg over the other. You look terrible, my friend. Long night? I told you, once you sign the papers, you'll finally be free. Richard's hand pressed flat against the table. Free, he said quietly. Or stripped of everything I've built? Austin laughed. Rick, come on. You've been drowning for months. I'm the one throwing you a lifeline. Funny, Richard said, lifting the folder between them. Because this lifeline has 17 million imaginary debts. Austin's smirk faltered for the first time. What are you talking about? You tell me, Richard replied, sliding the post-it toward him. The small yellow square looked harmless, but the words written on it had already rewritten 2 destinies. Austin stared at it, reading in silence. For a moment, nothing moved. Then he smiled again, but the edges of his mouth were tight. "Someone's playing games," he said smoothly. "You're letting a janitor's prank derail a legal process." Maya flinched. The way he said the word janitor burned like acid. "She's not a janitor," Richard snapped. "She's the reason you're not in handcuffs already." Austin laughed again, this time without warmth. "You're losing it, Rick. You can't take her word over mine. I've been your partner for 15 years. Richard's voice dropped low. "And in those 15 years, you learned exactly how to bury fraud so deep no one could find it, until she did." Maya's pulse thundered in her ears. Richard motioned toward her. "Show him." Her hands trembled as she plugged her phone into the conference screen. The images appeared one by one. The original documents, the correct totals, the false additions. Richard narrated each slide like a prosecutor building his case. 47 million in debt. That's the real number. But your version shows 64. Care to explain the difference? Austin's jaw flexed. "Clerical error," he said flatly. 17 million is one hell of a typo, Richard said. Especially when every error leads back to your office. Austin's mask cracked for just a second. "You can't prove anything." "Oh, I can," Richard said, pulling out a thick envelope. "Julie Baxter kept your emails, Austin. The ones between you and Franklin Rogers at Consolidated Supply Partners. I know about the fake creditors, the inflated invoices, and the kickback waiting for you once you forced me into bankruptcy." For the first time, Austin's confidence collapsed. "You went through my private." "I didn't," Richard interrupted. "Julie did. She came to me last night. You remember her, right? The secretary you screamed at until she quit. Turns out she didn't delete those backups." Austin's breath came fast now. His eyes darted between Richard and Maya. "You think this ends with me? You can't take me down without dragging this whole company through the mud." Richard stood slowly. "Then we'll rebuild from the ashes. But you, Austin, you're done." He nodded toward the door. "The FBI is on their way. I suggest you call your lawyer." Austin's face twisted with something between rage and panic. He turned to Maya, his voice dripping with venom. You think he'll actually remember you in 6 months? You'll go back to being invisible, scrubbing floors for people who forget your name." Richard's tone sliced through the air. "Get out." Austin hesitated, then grabbed his briefcase and stormed out, slamming the door so hard the glass trembled. Silence flooded the room again, heavy and unreal. For a long moment, Richard didn't move. He just stood there staring out the window at the city below. The man who had almost lost everything was breathing again. But every exhale sounded like the weight of years leaving his chest. He turned to Maya. "He was right about one thing," he said quietly. "I didn't see you before today. You've worked here for 3 years and I never even knew your name." Maya lowered her eyes. "That's just how the world works, sir." "No," he said sharply. "That's how I worked. Blind. You saved 60 million because you saw what everyone else ignored. You noticed. You cared. That's worth more than every degree on my payroll." He reached for a notepad, scribbling something down, then handed her the paper. "Starting Monday, you'll report to the Internal Audit Department. I'll pay for your training, your courses, whatever you need. I want you there looking for the things we all miss." Maya blinked, unable to speak. I don't understand. I'm a cleaner." "Not anymore," he said simply. "You're my new junior analyst." She shook her head, tears threatening to fall. "I can't accept that. It's too much." "It's not a favor, Maya," he said softly. "It's justice." He smiled then, small but genuine, the kind that comes after surviving the storm. Go home, see your daughter, take the rest of the week off, and when you come back, start your new life. She stood frozen, the reality sinking in. When she finally spoke, her voice cracked. Thank you. He looked at her with quiet conviction. No, Maya. Thank you for reminding me what integrity looks like. That night, as Maya drove home through the streets of Chicago, her Corolla rattled louder than ever. But for once, she didn't care. She replayed everything in her head, the numbers, the post-it, the tears, the promise. When she parked outside her small apartment, she stayed inside the car for a moment, watching the glow from the window where Ella was waiting. For the first time in years, she didn't feel invisible. Inside, Ella ran to her with open arms. Mom, you're home late. Did something happen? Maya knelt and hugged her tightly. Something big, baby, she whispered. Something that might change everything. They sat together on the couch as she told her daughter about the morning, the mistake that saved a company, and the man who offered her a second chance. Ella's eyes widened with wonder. You mean you're going to work in an office now, with a computer? Maya laughed through her tears. Yes, sweetheart. With a computer. Ella grinned, wrapping her arms around her mother. You're amazing, Mom. Maya closed her eyes, holding her close, breathing in that moment of peace she hadn't known in years. For once, the future didn't feel like a threat. It felt like a door opening. As she turned off the lights that night, her mind still hummed with disbelief and hope. But deep down, another thought lingered, a quiet unease that wouldn't let go. What if Austin Monroe wasn't finished yet? Do you think Austin will try to get revenge after losing everything? Drop your thoughts below. StorySphere is reading every comment. 3 months later, the wind over Chicago carried the chill of late fall as Maya stepped off the bus in front of the Vaughn Development Group building. She no longer entered through the service entrance. Her ID badge now opened the glass doors of the main lobby, and people greeted her by name. Morning, Maya, the receptionist called, and she still wasn't used to hearing that tone, warm, respectful, real. She smiled and took the elevator to the 18th floor where her desk waited beside a window overlooking the city. Her title plate read, Maya Bennett, Junior Audit Analyst. Every morning, she touched it like proof that it wasn't all a dream. The first weeks had been terrifying. She hadn't understood half the terminology her mentor Clara Freeman used in meetings. She'd stayed up past midnight watching tutorials, scribbling formulas into notebooks while Ella slept. But slowly, things started to make sense. Numbers began to speak to her again, just as they had that morning with the bankruptcy file. By the end of her first quarter, she was catching small inconsistencies others missed, and Clara's praise started to sound less like encouragement and more like belief. You have a gift, Maya, she told her one afternoon. Not learned, natural. Still, not everyone was kind. A few senior analysts resented her. They whispered behind her back, calling her the janitor miracle. Some hinted she had connections with Richard Vaughn. Others mocked her mistakes in hushed tones that weren't as quiet as they thought. She ignored them until the day Roger Maddox, the senior analyst known for his arrogance, decided to test her. He dropped a thick folder on her desk and said, "Let's see how good you really are." It was a maze of reports, receipts, and numbers meant to confuse. He smirked. If you can find what's wrong, maybe you're not just a lucky janitor. Maya spent hours buried in that folder. She cross-referenced every figure, every date. When Roger came back expecting her to fail, she handed it back calmly. 7 discrepancies, she said. 4 are serious. She listed them one by one: duplicate expenses, fake trips, false restaurant invoices. By the end, Roger's face had gone pale. Later that afternoon, security escorted him out. He'd been inflating reimbursements for months. Clara hugged her and whispered, "That was brave, Maya. You saved us again." That night, Richard called her into his office. "You've done more for this company in 3 months than some people have done in 10 years, he said, sliding a document across the table. "I want you to lead a new internal task force. Review every major contract from the past 2 years. Find anything that doesn't add up. The paper listed her new position, lead auditor. Salary $9,800 a month. She stared at it, unable to speak. You deserve this, he said simply. Not because of luck, but because you see what others don't. She accepted with tears in her eyes, thinking of Ella and how much life could change from one small act of courage. Months turned into a year. The task force uncovered more frauds, saving the company millions. Vaughn Development became an example of integrity across the industry. The story of the janitor who saved a billion-dollar firm spread through business magazines and morning shows. Reporters wanted interviews. Universities wanted her to speak. Maya always refused, until one day Richard walked into her office holding an invitation from the University of Chicago. They want you to give a talk about ethics and accountability, he said. You should go. She hesitated. I don't belong on that stage. He smiled. You belong more than anyone. On the day of the speech, she stood backstage, palms sweating. When they called her name, the audience erupted. Hundreds of people filled the auditorium. She stepped to the microphone and said quietly, 2 years ago, I was invisible. The room fell silent. I cleaned floors in this city for a company I didn't think even knew I existed. Then one morning, I saw numbers that didn't make sense. I could have looked away, but I didn't. I left a note. Her voice trembled. That note changed everything. She told them about fear, the kind that whispers, stay quiet. About the shame of being unseen, about her father's loss and how doing the right thing often means standing alone. I wasn't brave, she said. I was terrified, but courage isn't the absence of fear. It's choosing to act anyway. When she finished, the applause lasted so long she had to step back from the microphone. In the second row, she saw Ella clapping, eyes shining with pride. After the talk, journalists crowded around her. One asked, do you think people like you can really change big corporations? Maya smiled softly. I don't know if I changed corporations, she said. But I changed one man, and he changed a company. That man standing beside her nodded. Richard announced the creation of a new nonprofit, the Vaughn Foundation for Integrity, dedicated to protecting whistleblowers and funding education for underprivileged workers. And he said, our director will be the woman who started it all, Maya Bennett. She froze in disbelief. Me? Who better, he said, than the one who knows what it's like to be unheard? She accepted. Under her leadership, the foundation grew quickly. Within 2 years, it had helped dozens of workers expose fraud safely and rebuild their lives afterward. The media called her the invisible woman who made the world see again. But Maya didn't care for titles. What mattered was that people who once hid in silence now stood tall. She met with janitors, factory workers, waitresses, people who reminded her of herself. She listened to their stories and told them, you matter. What you see matters. One autumn evening, sitting with Ella in a small restaurant by the river, Maya looked out at the lights reflecting on the water. Do you ever think about how different life could have been? Ella asked. Maya smiled. Every day. If I hadn't looked at those papers, if I'd walked away, we'd still be struggling. I'd still think being invisible was safe, but I would have missed everything that came after, the people, the purpose, the chance to show you that doing what's right can change everything. Ella leaned on her shoulder. You're my hero, Mom. Maya brushed a strand of hair from her daughter's face and said, no, sweetheart. I'm just someone who finally stopped hiding. Outside, the wind carried the smell of rain and new beginnings. For the first time in her life, Maya didn't feel small. She felt seen, valued, and alive. The world might still be unfair, but she had proof that one act of honesty could ripple farther than anyone imagined. It could rebuild companies, heal families, and even redeem broken souls. As they left the restaurant, Maya's phone buzzed, a message from Richard. The foundation hit its 1-year mark today. 43 cases resolved, over $12 million in recovered funds. You did that. She smiled and typed back, we did that. Under the city lights, she took Ella's hand, feeling the quiet certainty that some stories never end. They just keep growing, like light spreading through dark halls. That morning, years ago, had been about saving one company. But in truth, it had saved two people who had forgotten what it meant to believe in themselves. If this story made you feel something, tell me in the comments. Do you believe one small act can change everything? If it touched your heart, comment the number 100 below so we'll know you were here with us, and tell us which country you're watching from. Share this story on StorySphere so more people remember that kindness and courage still matter in this world.